welcome everyone. Welcome to this episode. So, in the previous episode, we looked at these two models, the customer model and the supplier model, and we were able to create um, a handful of API routes and some endpoints. So, we created some endpoints that we tested out, and we did not create all the endpoints, but at least we created the ones to start with. So in today's video, we're just going to look at authentication. We are going to look at the authentication, and most of the times when someone talks about authentication, what comes into your mind first is the register and login. At least that is a common concept if you have been around backend development, whether using Node.js or React or using any front-end framework. When someone says, have you implemented authentication? You only think actually about register and login. And there is a reason why we attach register and login into the authentication process. And you are going to see that the first process is always the register. And registering actually means I've put here the definition and the purpose why we always want to first register before we actually log in. And the actual definition or the purpose is a process where a new user creates an account in a system by providing their credentials and other required information. This can be, of course, you have seen in the endpoint we created of recent, the user, we have it somewhere, the user, I think the user model, you saw that we collected a lot of information like email, username, password, first name, last name, and so many other information while we are actually registering a new user. That's why that information is really, really useful, and we use it to identify or to register the identity of a user. And the purpose, there are so many purposes, but the three important ones, one is user identity creation. So we registration creates a new unique user identity in the system. So when you register a new user, you have created a new identity in the system, and we are going to be basing on this identity to do other things like authorization, authentication, and login. So the system stores the user's credentials securely in database. The second one is credential storage. The password is usually hashed before storing to ensure the security. We saw all that. And then the last one is account activation. Some systems may also require email verification or other steps to activate the account. So in this, the one we did not put the account activation, and the reason being this app is going to be in-house, is going to be used by this one person for their shops. So there is no much need to activate sending like a verification code and so on and so forth. But in the systems we have been building previously, you know very well, we have been sending activation in the Next.js. When we're building the after registration, we always send the activation link. We send the code that someone has to input and activate the account. And that's the reason why you need actually to register first. So in the second place, we actually have to log in. And that is the one you're going to work on today, the login routes. So login is the process where a registered user provided their credentials, username, email, and password to gain access to their account. This process involves verifying the provided credentials against the stored user in the system. Very simple and very straightforward what login is, and it may just seem like it is something obvious, but when someone is asked to explain what is the purpose of signing, they start beating around the bush, And I thought of it to actually make it so clear in this video that actually login is a place whereby a registered user provide their credentials, and then we match these credentials to give them access to their account. So there are two purposes here, and the first one is identity verification. The login process ensures that the user is who they claim to be by checking their credentials. Then another one is access granting. Once verified, the user is granted access to the system and is protected and its protected resources. And this might also involve generating sessions or authentication token like JWT that the user will use in subsequent requests. Yeah, so the login is very clear and very straightforward, and is what you're going to look at in today. So that defines the way we identify. When we talk about authentication, we think of login and register. I was just like explaining how register and login are attached to authentication, but actually what is authentication? So for a tech person, we would say authentication is a process of verifying the identity of a user. As simple as that. Just a process of verifying the identity of a user or a system. It involves checking credentials such as username and password and some other data and all tokens from a database and so on and so forth. And for a non-tech person, the easy way to understand authentication is just like the way you come to a company and you have to show your ID to get into a secured building. You can't just come into any company like you go to Google and then any person enters in. You have to show something like an ID to get into that secured building. And it is a way a system checks that you are who you say you are before letting you in. And that is as simple as authentication. And I wanted to also take this opportunity to talk about authorization for both a tech person and a non-tech person. And the reason why I'm giving these two definitions is that sometimes you need actually to first understand something in a non-tech person perspective, and it helps you to actually explain this to a non-tech person. After all, when you're explaining this system to, for instance, to a user, most of them they will be non-tech, and you have to use the terms that are really friendly to them. So authorization is just like having a key that only opens certain doors in a building. So even after you have shown your ID, the system decides what you're allowed to do or see based on the permissions you have. And that is a very important thing. Some people have keys to open higher offices, others have keys to open just like one office. And that is what authorization does. You have passed the gate, right? You're a worker, right? But then where do you work? Which offices are you allowed to open? And that is the authorization. And it is very easy to understand. And for a tech person, you may see the process of determining what actions, resources, or services a user or system is permitted to access after the identity has been authenticated. So I want just to clear the air about these two things, authentication and authorization. And I believe at this point, you understand very well what authentication is and what authorization is. So let's look at the authentication. For now that we have seen the authentication, let's look at the authentication flow. So like how are we going to do this, and what are we going to do now? Specifically in this, actually also in this video, I just also want to talk about the JWT. And most people always request you talk about JWT. I will talk about JWT, and also at the end, I also want to let you know that JWT is not the only system people use to verify like the tokens, and we'll see JWT in details just in a second. So let's say the first one will be creating login API endpoint, for instance, auth login. And then after creating this endpoint, of course, it will be having it will just go with something like login with the login controller. So we just go ahead and create a login controller. And then After this, we'll get the user data from the body, very easy, destructure the information, and now we'll start the checks. So the first check is check if this user exists, and if the user exists, and then if it doesn't exist, then we send a user not found for author. If the user exists in the database, then we'll check for the password is correct or valid, and we can compare the password in the database and the password in the request body. If not matched, we also check send the response of 403 wrong password, and if the email and password are valid, then we go ahead and we create a token. Now, to create a token, we need three parameters: the payload, secret key, and the expiration time. This is just like when you just like basics of JWT. We're just going to look at that in details. But then after providing this key, then you can just go ahead and return an object or return a user now with this access token within. You can either return only the access token, or you can even return a user with the access token. And we are going to talk about why you would want to return a user with access token or just access token only. So to understand this is I will have to first understand what is JWT, because all these processes up to number 10, up to number 9, we have done this before in other places like customers and other places, even in the user. We have done all these up to number 9. The only one that is very new in this episode is actually about the JWT or JSON Web Token. So let's first understand like what is actually JWT and why would you want a JWT in your application. So JWT is a short form for JSON Web Token. As simple as that. It is just a JSON Web Token, and it is just a compact URL safe token, as you can hear, a token format that is used for securing transmitting of information between parties as a JSON object. It is composed of three parts: a header, a payload, and a signature, which are encoded as base64. So in the nutshell, JWT acts the way you see, the way we do password hashing. So for security purposes, you don't want to transmit the password between the client and the server just bare plain. You have a password, let's say test, you encrypt it to a very long token that you can save in the database. And when a user tries to log in, now you can compare that token, that password, the hashed password, against the password the user is entering. So JWT works in the similar way, to my experience and to my understanding, that JWT is simply an encrypted token that we encrypt all our data. That's why it takes in the payload. We get all the user data, we compile it together with some other things like this secret key and even the expiration time. We encrypt it into just a single token. And then this token, wherever a user is making a request back to the server or to access an API endpoint, we verify this token. As simple as that. That's what a JWT is. It is just a token that we just get our data and encrypt it inside. The way we get the plain password and we hide it inside the hashed password. So this one, we get the user data and encrypt it and add it inside the JWT token. It is just like a long characters, like maybe 64 characters, that we safely encrypt things inside. And then when we reach on the front end, we decrypt or decode it, we get the user data, and every time we just like making a request back to the server, we send back that token so that it is verified to know if this person can make this request to this endpoint. So as you said, it is containing three parts. It contains the header, contains the metadata about the token, such as the type of JWT and the hashing algorithm that is used. And you're going to see that the most common one is HS256. Now, I'm not an expert in the algorithms, like hashing algorithm. There are just so many, but the most common used one is HS256. Payload. Now, payload, it contains the claims, and when you say the claims, they mean the data or the data you want to transmit. Let's say you have a user information, e.g. user ID, roles, permissions, so on and so forth. The one we have in the other side, or other relevant information, that is the payload. And then the signature is a cryptographic signature generated using a secret key. And this is very important, the secret key. So, and the specific hashing algorithm, which ensures the token's integrity and authenticity. So now, as you have seen here, the what JWT is. Now, let's understand deeper what is the purpose. The primary purpose of JWT is to securely transmit information. So, if you want to transmit information from server to the client, it is very easy, or it is very secure to use a JWT. You encrypt things into a token and then decrypt them when you reach wherever the data is supposed to go. And every time you just come to make a request, then we verify. So the use cases for this is when you're using authentication, authorization, and status session. So you can just read about those ones, the notes. I will also leave this the PowerPoint in the documentation. You will get this PowerPoint in the documentation that you can read this um in more details. Okay, if I just go to the documentation here, I have this part about implementing JWT. But if you want to download this, you can download the presentation in the other previous notes that we did. Okay, so in the previous notes we did, we had that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and go here. And just in case if you went to the documentation and you didn't find, you're not seeing this, there's sometimes when it caches the routes. So you just come and just simply search for JWT. So you can just come here and say JWT, and then you can just click on it, and then it will bring this route. Sometimes it caches the routes and you'll see only two. As I've said, let's go on most logical part in what you're going to do, I think. So to understand what this is, it starts with us wanting to generate. Let me actually just change the order of this. So it starts us verifying. We have done a lot of it starts by you returning the access token in the user tries to log in. So a user tries to log in, we check so many things. If a user exists, if the password is correct, and when the password is correct, you can see here we are destructuring of the password, and we have here user without password. Okay, and then we can now generate access token. So you can see here we just get the access token and it takes in the user without password. So this information it is taking, it is actually the information it is going to go ahead and encrypt. Okay, so it's going to encrypt all this data the way we're seeing it here, and you can see I'm just actually structuring it here in the result. So I'm just actually returning it here. You can see response.json result says 200. So when someone actually tries to access and log in, and if everything is okay, you can see within the result, I'm actually putting the access token. Okay, and this is to help you just if you want to make other requests. So for instance, just in case you want to understand this generate access token function, what it is doing behind the scenes, we're going to see that here it's just like using it's a function here, generate access token. And as we said, it takes in here payload and the options. So the payload is the one we passed in. The payload is a user data or the information you want to encrypt. And then in the options, you specify the expiry time, like it expires in what time. And you can pass in days, in hours. And if you just pass a number, it will be in milliseconds. Okay, just like milliseconds or seconds. It is going to be in milliseconds, but it's just a good. You just pass in like a string. If you pass in like 1 hour, 60 hours, 70 hours, you can pass in any we want. So we pass in, for instance, like 1 hour, And then you can see here that this token here payload is JWT payload, and then like default sign-in option is that. And then you can see that it actually uses the secret key. In this generate access token, you can see that inside here we have this secret key, and you're going to be using this OpenSSL to generate this access, secret key. And this secret key is only referred to as a signature. So this signature or the secret key, you're supposed to keep it in the environmental variables, because if someone gets it, he can be able to manipulate this encrypted data. And then with that, we can now use the JWT.sign, and then you pass in the payload, the secret, and the options. As simple as that. And then you return the token. That's why we're using this token here. Okay, so when you generate the token and you have it, now you can go ahead. When remember this request here, this one was giving back, as we say, it is a response going back to the client. Let's say your Next.js application or your React Native application will receive this response. Now you can save it anywhere you want. You can save the access token in the either in the storage, in the wherever you want to save this token, more especially as a cookie or something. And then when you have that token, you can now make, for instance, another request now to this endpoint is protected. And you can see that in this protected, we have a middleware. So whenever you have three things like this, just know that this one is a middleware. So you can see we have a middleware that is intercepting the request. And if you check this verify token middleware, you will see that it is actually just verifying the token. It gets the token from the headers, and we pass this token in the headers the way we did with the API keys in the, if you remember, in the those who have watched the video about the feedback sync. If you have watched my video for feedback sync, you will see that how we generated the API keys, we are passing them in the headers. That's why here you are accessing the token from request.headers and is getting authorization. So when you get this token, it is actually just having, for instance, bearer token, and then the token is just like the second parameter. That's why we say here, after getting this token, you just come here token without bearer, and then you say token to replace bearer with this. Okay, and here you just get the actual token. And then after this, getting this token here, you can just now verify it the actual same way we verify the bcrypt compare. So here you can see we just use this the verify token, right? So you can see if error, and then we have this if there is error, and you can see when you are verifying, you have access to the decoded data. This is the user data, or the data that you encrypted, and this is the error. If you get the error, we return the error. Otherwise, you just go back to the request and you attach the user, and like this. Now this one, when you just do next, it will actually bring this and put it here, and to just proceed to this here. Okay, that's why we have access to the user at the end of the day. And that is the process how JWT works and or functions. And as we have said, the main data is actually to encrypt data, send it, so that when you just like want to return to create a request to a protected route, it can verify. Now, it does not necessarily mean it is going to be so much useful in some applications. Most of the routes, they are not going to be actually just like sending this to verify. Okay, after all, the person is actually authenticated to actually access that data. So most of these endpoints, they will not be like you might not like protect them, or you might actually just use API key for protecting the API routes. And that one takes us to the alternatives. There are some other systems that does not use JWT. That's why you see, for instance, in some other places, they don't use JWT. They can use session based on database. They save the database sessions in the DB. That's why when you're using next auth, it asks you if you want to use JWT or you want to use the database strategy. So it is up to you to use database, or you can even right away not use a JWT or use even cookies. Okay, you can use cookies, which have been also known to be exploitable by the CRSF tokens. Like people can just copy the cookie in the browser and then they manipulate it or they share it with others. So that is what I can just say about this. Let's just dive in and try to actually implement something in this. But I just believe that this PowerPoint really has some concepts that you might actually find very useful. And if that is the case, please, most of the users of my YouTube, they are not subscribed. Others, they don't like the videos. Please like and share the video and also subscribe and also press that notification bell so that you always get the updates when I release new content. So I'm just going to go ahead now, dive in, okay, into now our app. Now that we have just said a lot of things, we just have to start putting them together and see how we can actually create something. So the first thing is actually to create the router for this. So you could just add this and for instance, these are the users, because we have also already here the users. Now you can just like later just create another route for basically for login, and we're just going to do that. Okay, I'm just going to go and I think, and I'm just going to create the login route. So let's just say creating the route. I'm just going to create login.ts, and we can just say import express. So you can just say express just like this. Import express from express, and we can just say const the login router is equal to express dot router. So you can just say dot router, and then we can just go ahead and export default login router just like this, and in between here we can just say login router, and then we say when someone comes to login, and then you could just actually just call it auth login just like this. Then here just going to create a controller. So I can just go to controllers here and just create a new file called login.ts. And in here, you can just go ahead, copy one of these functions in anywhere, like in the user. So for instance, in creating the user, we do a lot of checks. I'm just going to go and copy the one for create user. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and import these two from, so get the DB. Okay, just get the DB like this. Okay, so just name this as, maybe we could just say call this authenticate, authorize. Let's just call this authorize user, just like this. Okay, and let's go to the login, and we just go ahead and put comma. We just say authorize user. You don't need to call this anything, just call it and just say authorize user, just like this. And this one is, sorry, we have to give this dot, and this is going to be post. Okay, login route dot post, and then we are posting on this, and then we can just go ahead and authorize user, and we can just make this endpoint accessible by actually bringing it here. So you just have API v1, and then you have the login router. Okay, so the easy one to test this endpoint is going to the login, and we can just go ahead and receive, for instance, we'll be using email and password. So we can just go ahead, actually get email, username, and password. Normally the person can use one of those ones. That's why we have the username. Okay. Now, before we do any checks, I'm just going to go ahead, remove everything here. Okay. Just going to go ahead and remove everything. Let's just go ahead and return. And I'm just going to move everything. Let's just go ahead and return. So you can just say raise dot status of 200 and dot JSON. Okay, dot JSON, and let's say here, let's say const user user details. Let's just say it is equal to username, password, and email. So you can just go ahead and pass this in here, like the user details. Okay, so you can just go ahead and we test this endpoint if this works. So if we just go to this and we pass in email and password, so I'm just going to go ahead and do, for instance, and I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate one of these. I will just duplicate this user, duplicate this, and let's name this one to be auth. So I'm just going to just say auth. Okay, and let's have start with login. That is like login user. So we just have to go here and we just go to v1 auth and then login. Okay, so you just go to this endpoint, and if you just go to the body, we need to provide only two things. So here you can see this, for instance, this one had the password. Just going to go ahead and pass in the email and password only, just like this. And let's look at the response just to test. Okay, so you can see this returns email password. This is the body that actually we are passing in just here. This is the purposes of testing this endpoint. So following the strategy we are going to use within here, we have already just done the first one is actually receiving the data from the request. That is the first thing, to receive the data from the request. Okay, so depending on the one you want, if you want to use the username or you want to use the email for logging in, you can just like consider using both. But I'll put these tips here. If you just go to if you just go up here, you can see that we have all these information here. We created the endpoint. We have also got the data from the body, and we have dispatched the information from the user. So we can just go ahead and check user by email or by. So if, for instance, the person tried accessing using the email, so you have to go ahead and say const existing user. In fact, we could just say like I could just like come here and I say existing user. Just say let existing user equal null. Okay, we can just like let it be null, and then when we come here and we can just say existing user. So you can just say if email. So because we don't know if they have provided email or username, okay, they can provide any of this. We can just go ahead and just say existing user is going to be equal to await db dot user dot find unique. So you can just say find unique, and then we can just say go ahead and pass in where, and we can just say email, right? So this one finds the existing user by email. Okay, we'll find the existing user, and if there is no existing user, okay, so we can just like do that logic afterwards. We can also just go ahead. We can also just go ahead and just say if username, we can just get the existing user by getting where username. So here you can just like find, and we get by username. So when actually finding the existing user at this point, we can actually just go ahead and return the existing user. So just go here, for instance, return response dot JSON, and let's be returning the existing user right now. Okay, so just go. We can now just simply send the same thing. Okay, so here is saying I don't know, is this, let's first get all users. We see the user that is some of the users that are existing. I'm just going to go ahead and make a request. Okay, so for instance, we have the Brenda, we have this one. Okay, let's just get at least one of the users here, like Brenda, and let's go to the login. Okay, and then just go here and you can see this one return the null. Just go ahead and just do this. Okay, so you can see now they have returned the user, right? We have this user, and you can just also pass in the username. So just go ahead and pass in the username to confirm that this one also returns this. So I'm just going to say username. Okay, so if I just put this and I put the email on the username, it will return null. Let's go back to the users and let's get the username for Brenda. And now I'm just going to go here, provide this instead. Okay, so here, and let's send. Okay, so you can see now it also returns this. Great. So you can use the username to get back the user. So another thing now is to go ahead. So if there is no username, instead of just returning null, so just going to say here, if no username, if no username, sorry, no existing user. Okay, you just want to return a very good error. So you can just say return response dot status. So you can send the status of 404, and then we say, for instance, dot JSON, and then in this we can just send back the error of user not found, and here you can just say data of null. Okay, great. And now if we just go ahead, now we just add some other a here in the brand and send, we should just return now a very good response that says user not found and a error code of 404. Okay, great. That is nice. Let's move on. So moving on is now we can check the password. Check if the password is correct. So you remember from the documentation, if you just look at this, we said if there is no user, we have turned user not found, and if the user exists in the database, we check if the password is valid or not valid. So here we can just say const is we can just say const password match. You can just call this anything you want, but say password match is equal to. So here we just want to go ahead, since we have at this point, we have the existing user. If someone reaches this point, means they have the existing database. Now want to check the password. So we can just say await. Okay, and we can await bcrypt. So I'm just going to go on top here, and then just going to import bcrypt. There's something that gives me a time to write this from bcrypt. So here I'm just going to await bcrypt. Now on the bcrypt, it has this compare function, and the compare function takes in two things. It takes in the compare function takes in, you can see here, data and the encrypted. So you just have to compare the encrypted password and what the user have entered. I think we can just like verify this in the documentation. If you say bcrypt, you can just go here and see that in this there is plain password, and this one you can use it to hash. We saw that, and then there is this bcrypt compare. So you put in your compare function, your plain password and the hashed password. So you can just say compare, and you pass in the password. This is what a person has passed in, the plain one, plus the hash. And the hash, bcrypt.compare, and the hash is going to be existing user dot password, right? Yeah, this is what the person passed in. And here we can just go ahead, for instance, and we say um, if no password match, okay, then here just want to return response dot JSON. Okay, And by the way, you might just like also not return this error. This error here, you might just say, for instance, instead of saying user not found, you may just say wrong credentials. And this one, let's say someone was trying to hack a certain user. So instead of just saying you wrong user not found, it means that the email they have tried is the one which is wrong. But if you tell them wrong credentials, they might not actually know what was wrong. Either the password or the email, they might not actually know right away. So we don't want to give them suggesting things, for instance, wrong password. So if you just say wrong password, it might be something which is going to be suggesting for them what is actually wrong, and they keep on basing on it to predict the right one. So here you could just also just return wrong credentials and that. Okay, and let's just go ahead and try. So here we have Brenda and test. So I'm just going to do this. If I pass, so now you're going to see that we have wrong credentials. Now you cannot know if the username is correct or the password is correct. You cannot know. So right now I'm just going to correct this. We know very well that this is correct, but the password might be wrong. So you can see it tells you back wrong credentials. So handling not to suggest to user what exactly is wrong, because if you tell them wrong password and someone was trying to hack them, you will just know that the email is correct but the password is actually wrong. Okay, so right now I'm not sure if I know the password for this, but we're just going to, I think we know for admin. I think the password for the admin was admin. Let me just try. So I'm just going to say user admin and password admin. Let's see here. Okay, so you can see at this point we have gotten back the user, meaning we actually passed for the two tests. Okay, and if I just say put here administration or something, I add something in this and try to access again, you can see wrong credentials. Okay, so now at this point we are good. If you have the username correct, or if I put admin at admin, I think it's admin at admin.com. Let's first check in the users. Down here we have the one for the admin. Okay, it is admin at admin.com. So if I use this, I should also pass, right? Okay, so we have admin at, okay, here it is supposed to be email. Just like this. Okay. We're just going to go here and we are passing this. Okay. We're using either email or password. Everything works correct, and we have this. So if someone passes, they check. So you can see here we have checked the password. So as in this here, if they compare the password in database and it is correct, if not matched, we send the wrong password. And by the way, when you're sending, so here we can attach also the status. So you can just come here dot status, and you can attach this one 403. Okay, you can attach 403. And to be consistent, you can, instead of saying 404, you can also put this 433 forbidden. Okay. So moving is, so when you pass all these checks, if the email and password are valid, so we go ahead and now create the token, right? So to create the token, we have to have a generate token function. Okay. So you can just go here and create the utils. I think we can have like the way we create folders, we can just also create one folder Either you can create it inside or outside, it doesn't matter. But you just create it inside of utils of the source. You're just going to call this utils, and inside here you're just going to create a function called generate JWT token. Okay, JWT.ts .ts, just like this. And I put this function here on this, create a token generate function. Just simply copy this and just bring it here. Okay. So the first thing you have to install is JSON Web Token, and you can just see here. This is the step here. You have to install this. Okay. Install JSON Web Token. So open the terminal. And let's go ahead and install this. npm install JSON Web Token. And the second thing you need to do is to install the types, so it doesn't install the types. So go ahead and also install the types for JWT. That's why you see here it is still showing this. And actually, if you hover there, they already show you that you can install these types like this. Okay, so after installing the types, everything should be now okay. Okay, so the next, I think, before we do this, we can also create the environmental variable here, and we pass in our, so just going to go ahead and create another key here, which is going to be secret key. So you can just say secret, secret key, just like this. And we're just going to add the secret key here. And I added the code for generate. If you scroll down, you have here, use this command to generate the secret key, and you can just copy this and generate 32 characters, just like this. Okay. And this one generates for you this. Okay. Just simply copy it and let's add it here. So this one generates a random character that is strong enough to protect you. Okay. So we have a secret key. Now, if we go back to the generate here, we have no errors. And as you can just see, we said that the generate access token just needs three things. And the things it needs is the payload. That's why we are passing in this function, the generate access token, the payload. And the payload is the user data you want to encrypt. And then the secret key, this is the secret key. As you can see, process.env. If I hover here, you can see the secret key here. So this is the secret key that we pass in here. And the last one are the options. And these options, they actually have the expire in time. It's an object that you can specify when it should expire. So you can just have this 1 hour. You can just put, for instance, 7 hour. This is accepted like this. Sorry, like this. Can put 7 days. These are all acceptable. Just leave it at 1 hour. So after having this one, now we can use this function inside our controller, login controller here. So at this point, after everything is okay, the password has matched, we can just go ahead and first of all, we can now abstract. Let's destructure password, destructure out the password from the existing user. So you can just say simply say const, and you can just say password. We can rename this to user password, comma, and then we can just say here user without without password, user without password, and is equal to is equal to existing user, just like this. Okay, so now if we go ahead and return, so right now, if you just go back here in this, right now has a password. If you just scroll up here, you can see we have the password within. We don't want this at all costs, so we just simply want to omit it, and we can omit it using this technique. And now I can just instead return the user password. Okay, or I can just say here const result result, you can just say const result is equal to user without pass, just like this. This one will be an object. I don't know if I should destructure this just like this. Okay, so if I just go ahead and return the result, yeah, let's just go ahead and return user result, just like this. Just going to show you why I'm just doing the result, because we are going to add in more data inside here. But if I just go back here and I send the request, it passes, but this time there is no password. Okay, so we have just like hidden the password from this. So the only thing we just want is to add the access token. Okay, as we said, you can just actually return access token only, and then you reach on React Native application, destructure that or decode it, and then get back the payload. You can have a way to decode it, and then you get back the payload because you have the access key. But right now I'm just going to add it there just to I'm going to be adding it here just in case I want to use it on the front end. The access key, I'll be having it here in the user data. So now we can just go here down and we say const, for instance, access token is equal to, and this one is going to be generate access token, and then we pass in the payload, and that is the user without pass. So just like just passing this all this data as the payload. So now you can just go ahead and inject this inside here, the access token. Okay, so now if I just go ahead and see the result, it should have the access token. So, and let's log in. And this time, let's scroll down. You can see we have this access token that is really a long and huge characters. Now, if you want to really see the power of this, okay, we can just go and head to JWT.io. JWT, so you can just say JWT.io. And this is the website where we can actually see the try to decrypt the access token. And that's why you should just like your access token should be really encrypted very well. So let's just go ahead and input this. I'm just going to copy this token, copy it just like this, and paste it here. Okay. So you can see here that you are seeing here the headers, the algorithm they use to hash this. You can see, as we said, the first part, it is divided into three parts. It has the header, as you can see here. It's this. The header is always just having the algorithm that they use to hash this. And then the payload, this is the data that we used, or the data that you used to put this or to hash this. You can see this is the data, and then you can always just like, for instance, verify the signature. So if you just go ahead and you see here, you can just like secret, and you want to turn on the secret, and you just go ahead, for instance, if you want just like to verify the signature or not. But this one shows you that you can just like this, you are 256 base. I think you're supposed to paste it here. I don't know. Let's go ahead and paste it there, and we see in the env, and let's go ahead and put this the access key just like this. Just I'm not sure how it works, but I'm just going to paste here. Okay, it's like verify or not. I don't know how this is supposed to work now. There is even the algorithm here. So they say credentials which grant access to resources. Be careful when you paste them. We do not record tokens. All validation debugging is done on the client side. Okay, this is to tell you that they are not this information for you. Might just be like, wow. So these one are just like saying it, or they have this. That's why. But the most important thing is actually this access token. Someone cannot. Now you can see here the signature verified. Uh, I guess if you remove this, I don't know, like what happens to verifying the signature, I don't know. Okay. Uh, but they show you the part how this is encoded actually, all this, and then this last one is this one. Okay. Yeah. So this is how you can just see you can decode. So you can see this is encoded and this is decoded, just like this. Okay. Yeah, so what we want is afterwards, after we have just done this, we just return this data now to the client or to the person who is going to go. So this data is going to be sent to the React Native application, receives it, and then saves it in the async storage and starts using this one. Okay, so I think at that point we just covered uh, all what it takes within this route here. There are some other functions that you can use or you can write. For instance, the one for verifying this JWT. Okay, you can also just write this to verify JWT for the protected routes, and then protect the route user makes the request. Just like this, you can just go ahead and create the middleware. I'm not going to create that. I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope this was really clear and it helped you understand how to use JWT, generate the JWT, and embed it into your request or the response, so that you use it just in case you want to decrypt that at some point or you don't want. So you could just only, if you wanted, here while we are returning, what is this controller? So in this here, so where we are returning this, you could just go ahead and take off this. You return only the access token. Okay, and then you can just use this in the future to decode it in React Native and then do the rest from there. Okay. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to leave it like this. Okay, just going to leave it like this, and I will see you in the next episode.